Okay, hello everyone. I am going to show you a fairly quick demonstration on how to use the app Autodesk Sketchbook. So I have the app open here on my tablet, and the general layout is fairly similar to the mobile version and to the desktop version, but they are all slightly different. So this one is kind of in between the other two, so hopefully this will give you a pretty clear idea on how to get started. So on the right-hand side, you can see we have this column where if I keep pushing this plus button, I can keep adding more layers into my design or into my painting. This big white rectangle here is my image or my canvas, essentially. And when you go to create a new sketch, you can set the size of your sketch. And so this one is 4,000 by 3,000 pixels, I believe. And I'm just going to go ahead and create the same one. And there's a few different tools that are really, really handy to have. Most of the basic ones are going to be brought out on the side over here. So you have an eraser, you have paintbrushes, markers, airbrushes, pencils, etc. There's always going to be these two circles which have different functions. The first one is for your tool, whatever tool you're using. So right now you can see I'm using the pencil tool. Let me also change my brightness real quick. Okay. So I'm using this pencil tool right now. I could switch this to charcoal tool. I could switch this, so this would be the effect of the charcoal tool. I could change this to a paintbrush. And if you pull the top circle or the tool circle to one side, left or right, that'll change the size of your mark. So if I move this to the right, this will make the mark a lot wider. And then changing up and down will adjust the opacity of the mark. So if I keep lowering this, it will eventually kind of disappear. And if I go all the way back up, that is completely opaque. So that's how that works. I'm going to create a new layer here and delete this one. Okay, and the second one here is going to change your colors on your color wheel. So these are really important functions for you to know. It's really intuitive and it's pretty straightforward how to make some of these adjustments. I'm not positive if the mobile version has some of these extra color properties within this tab. So if I move my locator here within my square of tone, shade, and tint of one hue, that will tell me what the complementary color would be up here on the top. So I'm just going to keep this kind of in this lower right side of the blue for now. The other thing I want to show you how to do is import photographs. So let me go back really quickly here for a second. Along the top of my app, I have a few different functions. So on the left here is my menu tab. That'll take me to the gallery where I have other designs that are saved. I can export my design this way. I can change my preferences, or I can start a new drawing. So that's the menu button. You have your back and forward buttons. So if I make a mark here and then I make another mark, I can go back, but I can also go forward and undo and undo, if that makes sense. So I'm going to take both of those away. You have a selection tool here. So if I do make a mark, I can click on the selection tool and I can draw around something I'd like to move. So now that this is selected and this shape or this line is on the same layer that is also selected. So if I had multiple layers and I selected this, but that layer wasn't also selected, if I did this and I go to move this, nothing's going to move. That's because this layer is selected when the tool is actually on this layer here. So now if I go back to my selection tool, draw around this, and this layer is selected, the next tool over along the top here is my move tool. So now I can move this one form, this one shape, different places. I can make it larger, I can spin it around, make it smaller. You can also like do free transform, which is this first box here, and this can really change the shape and it can really change the character. You can move it just like more up and down a little bit easier with this tool here. You can mirror it or flip it vertically or horizontally, or you can just rotate it like 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So I'm gonna leave that there for now. So that's the move tool, your selection tool, or sorry, the selection tool, the move tool. You have a paint like fill tool. So now this line that I drew with my paintbrush is outlined with the edge of the paintbrush and the outside of my field. So I'm gonna undo that. You have a ruler guideline tool where now I can draw straight lines if I move my ruler different ways. This is pretty straightforward. You also have a symmetry tool. So if I click this little eye on the corner of this layer, it hides everything on this layer. So that it's still there, it's just not being seen. I'm going to take my ruler away by unclicking it. Now I can, click a new layer. And if I draw something on one side, it'll create the same thing mirrored on the other side. And you can do this vertically. You can do this in quadrants. You can do this in multiple sections like this as well. And you can change how many sections there are. So it's a pretty interesting feature on this tool as well. Let me hide this layer. The next thing you can do is draw with tools. So if you sort of pull from one point, that'll make a line for you with the line tool. You have an oval tool here to create circles and ovals. And there's also a rectangle tool where you can create rectangles and squares. So this is a nice way to create flat geometric shapes too. Now I'll hide this. The next option here is a predictive stroke tool, which kind of rounds out. So if I make a really loose kind of, not ugly line, but just a line with a lot of irregularities in it, this will smooth that line out and create more of an even flow throughout the line. And you can adjust that level as well, or it'll really change that character. I don't really use those tools very often though. Let's create a new layer. The next function is importing a photo, which is a really, really important function. So I already have photos saved on this device, or if you have photos saved on your phone, you can import them with this function right here. It's like a little mountain picture with a plus sign in the corner. That's how you add pictures in. And when you import a picture, it'll put it on a new blank layer in your composition. So now that you have a photo in here, and because we're working with collage as a process, you're going to want to bring in more than one photo or multiple photos. So I saved a couple different like bowling pictures here. And I also brought in some pictures from the movie series Lord of the Rings, just because it's a very, very different topic that I think would be interesting to see next to images of bowling. So I just brought in like 4 different images here. And what I can do now is I can try out some of these other different functions where I can make selections of certain things. I can outline Gandalf here. And if I click on the layer where Gandalf's picture is and push cut, it'll remove him from that image. I can then paste him by clicking on a different layer and hitting paste to put him onto a different layer. And I can make copies of him. I can, totally change his form. I can do a bunch of different things with him, all through some of these basic functions that I've already showed you. Something else I want to introduce you to now, let's take off some of these other photos real quick. So if I click on this layer where Gandalf is and I go to HSL adjustment, it'll bring up a few different levels that I can play around with, and I can change the hue of the image. And what this will do is create a monochromatic hue throughout the entire image. I can change the saturation from 0 all the way to 100. So you can end up making it more saturated than the saturation levels it came in with. And you can change the lightness and darkness, or essentially the value of this one layer. So there's a bunch of different options you can do there. I'm going to go to Reset. And if I click on the layer again and go to Color Balance, you can do a similar thing here by changing some of the hue, temperatures in the shadows, in the midtones, or in the highlights. The issue with these is that a lot of times you end up with very simplified layers and very simplified color relationships. So I don't recommend relying solely on this if you're editing the color in your images. I would definitely stick to the design and the composition first, and really try to play around with what happens if you are duplicating things and layering things more than once. What starts to happen with the space, and what are some of the different interesting areas of positive and negative space. And the other thing that you're really going to be dealing with this assignment is this idea of juxtaposition, which is the concept that the meaning of two objects. So I have the eraser tool on right now, and I'm just going to erase part of the background here. But I was going to say, if the meaning of two objects is very different when they're separated, that meaning can start to shift and grow and develop when it's placed against something that's outside of its usual context. And it's a very important function when composing and designing your paintings. So part of this assignment of collaging multiple sources together is to get to that idea of juxtaposition and really exploring how you can develop a painting that is visually interesting because of its design and color choices, but also has a surprising message because of the way that the signs and symbols and references are being juxtaposed. So essentially, this is what you're going to be doing while you're composing your design. Really take some time to play around with the different functions and tools. Don't forget to play around also with scale. What are the things that you're going to want to really emphasize or build contrast around because of the scale or proportions of your design? So this is pretty much all I wanted to show you. When you're ready to save your design, click on the menu button here and hit save. And that'll bring up a few different options as well. You can save it to the gallery of the app, which is good if you want to go back and rework all of the layers and all of the little nuances of your design. Definitely save it to the app's gallery. If you really like what you have and you don't think you're going to want to go back in and change anything, and you don't feel like that's necessary, you can also share it, which will save it as either a PNG file, which is like the Apple basic photo file, or you can save it as the file that has all of this information of each layer, which is a very, very large file. So it's up to you what you want to do. At the very least, save it as a flattened image or a PNG. When you click on that, then you can go to Save Image here, which will save it to the device's memory. So that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to show you. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. There are a few other tutorials on YouTube and online that go into more in-depth functions with each of the different tools and in your library of tools that you can use. One thing to keep in mind is that this is one step in the full painting process for the assignment. So try not to spend too much time playing around in the app because you at some point you have to find a design that is interesting enough to make 3 6x9 inch color studies off of. So have fun with this step, but also remember that there's more to happen with this assignment. So don't get too distracted. But okay, well, good luck, have fun, and thanks for watching the video.